Welcome to Impact Innovators with Felicia Ford, where we dive into the strategies that empower changemaker brands to leave a lasting legacy. Think of this podcast as your audio playbook for meaningful action. What's possible when thought leaders, disruptors, and pioneers align to share their journeys? I'm Felicia Ford, your host, bringing together the brightest minds and the most groundbreaking ideas to help you drive change, navigate through the sticky stuff, and elevate your brand. Whether you're tackling funding hurdles, looking for growth strategies, or seeking the perfect balance between profit and purpose, we've got you covered. Stay tuned and be a part of a movement that's setting new benchmarks in how we think about progress, community, and doing. Let's innovate, impact, and inspire. All right, my friends, we are here back again today with a special guest who's shared with me a new term, and I can't wait to talk more about it. But I want to share with you, if you've been building a brand, you know that building it goes beyond a great product or service. It also includes being selective about who you align yourself with along the way. Maybe you've tried to perform partnerships that promise growth, but ended up feeling one-sided or left you questioning the deal. The frustration of constantly giving more than you're getting back can hold you back in more ways than one. I want you to meet Kemuel C. Browne, a creative powerhouse from the U.S. Virgin Islands, a seasoned brand strategist, manager, and accomplished musician with over 20 years of experience, alongside leading FYI Management Group, where he drives innovative strategic campaigns for brands. Kemuel's background as a pianist, bassist, and musical director brings a unique rhythm to his work. His expertise spans music, sports, and entrepreneurship, blending strategy and creativity to craft impactful, sustainable growth for his clients. His innovative strategies have helped brands scale authentically, creating a powerful impact that stands the test of time. In today's episode, Kemuel shares how to cultivate partnerships that don't just look good on paper, but translate to real sustainable growth. Kemuel, I am excited to meet you and talk with you today. Thank you for joining us.
Man, thank you for having me. That was an impressive intro. So people got some things to beat right now. You're setting the bar really high. I appreciate that.
Of course, of course. So I have some experience in the music world, and I love that you're creative and a musician. I've been, really excited about our conversation today because when it gets to talking about creativity and music and partnerships, I mean, what better way to start the day, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely, man. Let's jump into it. It's exciting, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. But it's so unique how the journey takes you on different paths, and you really do have to just delve into where you're at so that you can eventually get to where you're going. So that's awesome.
Yeah, so you've come from the US Virgin Islands to where you are now, and then obviously you've had a journey of careers and blended all of this together to produce what you're doing now. So share with us a little bit about where you started and where you are.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm from the U.S. Virgin Islands, the island of St. Croix, 84 square miles in totality. So I'm from a spot on the map. However, for some odd reason, the U.S. Virgin Islands, I always say, per capita, we put out the most talent. No matter where you go through this world, you're going to find at least a Virgin Islander operating at a high level within some type of career field.
Yeah.
So it's really, really impressive as I get older and see that, just barely 100,000 people total combined islands, that we're in every nook and cranny. Raised up in St. Croix, blue collar parents. My dad was an entrepreneur, owned his own lawn care service. My mom is an educator. So that I got that best of both worlds at an early age. Dad was very adamant in having me in music. He himself is a musician as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I got into being a pianist at the age of 6, classically trained and grew up within that world. doing all like the classical music competitions and all that type of stuff. And then, of course, naturally, growing up in church, that transfers pretty well, where church becomes like this harvesting ground, and a safe space, so to speak, for that type of development. So that was great. Grew up, we did all, the choir thing, and I really started kind of developing. At the time, I didn't know it was called being a musical director. I was just, by default, the piano player who by default kind of leads the band by default.
Right.
And so that started at an early age. And then as I started kind of getting into it more, then I realized, okay, this is musical directorship. And, that's actually a career, because at the time I was not at all anticipating being a professional musician. So that's a whole other story, but it was on the path. I was going to be a pilot and an engineer, aeronautical engineer. So that was the path I was really heading on. Dad wanted me to kind of really delve more into the music. So we had that, but he also wanted me to do the flight thing. So he was on board with that. And as I grew up, things happened. And I moved to the States from the Virgin Islands, moved to Maryland. And that's where, I was going to school for aeronautical engineering. And then, things happened. My parents got divorced. I started paying for my own way through school. And then that same gift and talent that I had been honing up to that point, which was the music and being at that point, being a musician, converted into becoming a professional musician, where God aligned me with people who were really there at a high level, who were professionals, and showed me, hey, man, you can do what you love and make money. So eventually I had to pick a path with opportunities coming to me to tour and do these different type of things, as I was developing and honing my skills. And I started missing more and more school, I don't care if you're studying communication or engineering. If you start missing too much of school, you're going to get some letters and, hey, Mr. Browne, are you sure this is, what you want to be doing? Because you're not making classes as much. So I had to make a hard decision. And I made the decision to go and become a full-time musician. And I was at age 23, about 22, 23. And I never looked back. Dropped out of college, never looked back. But for me, education was always about what it is that you yourself go and seek, outside of just the walls. So that's how I really started to evolve and really hone my craft. Then moving to Atlanta around the age of 26, Atlanta was such a big, beautiful place. It was so Black, it was so diverse, it was so rich. And outside of the Virgin Islands, I had never experienced anything like that. And it's still a higher level just in terms of size and things of that nature. And then, after ingratiating myself within this community in the music world, I started really realizing that, hey, I'm in a box, which is a great box to be in, and you should, niche and to attain certain results. But I knew that I was more than just a musician. So that was a whole other self development journey for me, which kind of, I started really studying, the things that people were extracting out of me, because sometimes people extract things out of you more than you would even know for yourself. I realized a lot of times people were asking me about, hey, visually, how does this look? And, what do you think about this from a strategy standpoint and sequencing, the order of things? And, at the time I thought it was mutually exclusive for music. I'm just okay, this is my creative side. Let me just delve into my creative side. And then the pandemic happened, right? We all sitting down at home, twiddling our thumbs and not really knowing where we're going to go back outside. And I really was able to really sit down and really analyze, what is it am I providing? What is it that people are seeking from me? And how do I kind of categorize that and obviously take that and make and convert it into a career? And I realized that it stemmed from brands. It stemmed from the ethos of people's businesses and what it is that, they wanted to sequence and have people feel. And come to find out, it all was in sync, from the education to the music to branding, and then it became this beautiful ecosystem that I'm so happy to be on this journey.
Oh, you've said so much that I want to unpack a little.
Please.
I mean, man, you're a great storyteller.
Oh, thank you.
Never.
And all of what I just said, at the core of me, that's who I am. So that's what I said. I'm a storyteller. That's what I love to do.
Yeah, I mean, and you've had this incredible journey and you've, you know, I would say island culture is different. My family is from the Dominican Republic.
Oh,
And but I grew up in a rural area. And so you've just shared with us how you've, starting there and then going to the DMV and
mhm.
now in the ATL. And so you've experienced different cultures,
Right.
but then you've also, as an MD, and being a musician, seeing what you see. Now, I've watched those of you who are MDs and how,
Mhm.
you're playing, but then you got the thing in your
Yeah, you got
ear
your ears. Yeah, yeah. Go
and
ahead. You're on point.
and you see what's going on out in the audience, and then you
Yeah,
see the musicians, and you're orchestrate. People don't realize how much you've got going on in your head at one time,
man.
and then you're on point and you're driving the mood,
Mhm.
right? And so I just see, as you were telling your story, I'm just seeing like, oh wow, he's really orchestrating a whole movement, a whole mood, a whole symphony.
Mhm.
And then, I'm gonna say a left brain person studying aeronautical engineering and a creative, like
Right.
you're like right here. That box, some people say, I don't want to be in a box, but you describe it
Mhm.
as the box, but you described it as the box that's the box you want to be in.
Right, right, right. That's a niche, Yeah, it has to start somewhere. And the box is just structure, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
box
yeah.
is just structure. I think the difference between the proverbial negative connotation of a box
Right.
and the structure of a box is really settling. If you're not looking to evolve,
Yeah.
and hypothetically speaking, you're in this box without continuing to self-develop, that's where that box can become negative. But that box is really just structure, and we know that with anything, the best things come from structure.
Yeah.
I myself, I have this thing that I like to say, flow like water, but the best
Mhm.
water is structured, and that just comes from, like, when you study, like, they say you should eat your water, like more fruits and vegetables, or, like, if you're drinking water, add a little bit of, like, salt, like Celtic salt or something, to structure the water so that it can really absorb better. So
Mm.
I use that hypothetically to convert it to, like, yo, flow like water, be pliable, and be able to change and pivot when the time requires. However, you still have to structure it. There's no way that you can just willy-nilly your way through life and just freestyle it without ever structuring something.
Ah, I'm flow like water. That
Flow
is
like
such
water.
that evokes such a mood
Mm-hmm.
and a mindset like instantaneously.
Mm-hmm.
It shifts everything. It shifts the perspective. It shifts the conversation.
Right.
Flow like water.
Yeah.
Spoken like a true musician, Kemuel.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That never leaves, man. That never leaves. And even for me now, over the past couple of weeks, there were some, like, beautiful epiphanies. Just on, like, yeah, how that journey that I'll be honest, in full transparency, I was, after I started making that transition, even though I'm still in the music world, fully that transition to really delve into and educate and be able to become the best brand strategist and manager I could be. I was ashamed of that background, because
Mm,
when you're going into certain rooms and I'm hearing this Fortune 500 CEO, this, and then, hey, Kemuel, so what is your background? You're almost like that imposter starts kind of creeping up, like, bro,
hmm.
you play 88 keys, yeah, you've been around the world, and yeah, you're an MD, but that doesn't add up to these guys. So I was almost ashamed. And it was beautiful. A friend of mine last week on LinkedIn, she had posted something, and I had commented about it. Her post was about, how coming from being a teacher has impacted her as a content strategist and things of that nature, and how it syncs. And I commented, and she responded and said, hey man, I remember when you were like this powerhouse piano player when we were growing up, and, like, I imagine you use the same creativity, to brand and to come up with your strategy. And it was like, eureka, for real. Not that I hadn't known it, but to hear it in that way, the way she sees it,
Yeah.
was like, yeah, like, it all works together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm again, I'm sitting here. I love being able to be in this seat, right? I so appreciate being able to connect with people like you, change makers. And, I've got some degrees on my wall, right? But like you, I had to make that decision in my life of, my creative, am I going to continue singing professionally? Am I going to continue managing,
Mhm.
or which way am I going to go? But I say this from, um, out of honor and respect for your gifts, but also out of what you just shared about the imposter syndrome. Your way is actually harder. And the fact that you are thriving in it speaks even more volumes in the Fortune 500, because they have a path that was structured and outlined.
Right.
You have created your own path. Like,
I'm grateful. Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
amazing, incredible. And then to, land here as a brand strategist, you're now crafting the story for others. You're now creating the atmosphere for others. You are the influence. One of my favorite movies is The Devil Wears Prada.
Absolutely.
And that moment when Meryl Streep says, and I can't remember the other actor's name, but she said something to her about like this blue cerulean sweater, and she's like, "You think it comes from this, but you have no idea." And then
Right.
she goes through the arc of how fashion influences everything else.
That's right.
And people don't realize that. And so I see that in your work. Your work influences everything else, every other industry. We follow all of that. So I'm curious to hear how your focus on strategic partnerships came about out of all of this incredible story.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I think it stems from it goes back to the music to the extent of communication. That was like super super important. In life, we can only go as far as we can communicate. You can have the best idea in the world. If you can't communicate it to one, stakeholders or your consumer base, those different dynamics, you're not going to get very far. You might sell some product and you might make a little bit of a wave, but for real impact, you have to do that. Partnerships are the same way. If I'm in a relationship with someone and she feels like I'm not hearing her and I feel like she's not hearing me, we're never going to get past whatever this little hump is or big hump.
Oh, yeah.
That aligns with strategic partnerships. For me, when my clients are, first of all, when I'm sourcing clients, I look at their verticals, I look at their strengths, I look at their weaknesses. Those things you have to be able to look at it and really analyze so that one, you know who you should align yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, especially in this day and age, because the currency is kind of about clout now. Clout is almost like the new currency. So people are willing to just, hey, if I see this company is looking for influencers, I might not even connect. I've never probably even drank the drink they're selling. I've probably never worn the clothes that they're talking about. But just because it might be a check or it might be a means of visibility and clout, then I'm just going to jump on board because I want that. A lot of time people run into issues because one, partnerships about who you are. We know as brands are about the intangibles. It's about the feeling that is provoked and invoked from the morals and the values and the things that you put within your company.
Yeah.
So you have to take those things and in sequence and in order, make sure that you one, know who you are as a brand, as an entity. And then once you know who you are, then you can now build out who are you going to align with. And partnerships are it's one of my favorite parts of the job because it really does it comes down to research, it comes down to analysis, it comes down to really knowing yourself and telling and being able to be truthful about who it is you are. If you lie to yourself, you're probably going to lie to yourself and put yourself in a corner of a partnership that you might have to back your way out of. Think of some of the biggest partnerships that we've seen. Let's use Kanye, for example, having to sever ties with Adidas, right?
Right.
That was, from afar, we all, for the most part, I'll speak for myself, I thought it was a genius partnership. I thought natural progression there, you know. However, because I didn't have all the information, and, you know, I couldn't really, identify what are the things that align and what are the things that don't align, and really look at it, you know, and look at the left and look at the right and be like, okay, we got these 3 things that align, but there's these 2 things that are actually stronger of a con than they are. And then that's how you run into issues. And now it's more expensive for you to sever the partnership than it is for you to actually accomplish and successfully do it. So strategic partnerships are nothing to play with. I want everybody who's listening to understand that you really need to know who you are as a brand before partner with anybody. Really identify that. And that doesn't mean have all the answers, but the core of you should know, you know, who you are, what do you do, and why do you do it? And that's 3 things I always tell my clients: who, what, why. Those 3 questions will save you a lot of time, a lot of headache, and a lot of money.
Right. And what you stand for and what you don't, because I mean, you just gave a great example of a disaster.
That got weird quick.
Real weird. When you're working with, I'm gonna tag on to what you just shared, but when you're working with clients, if there's an organization, a brand that's like, okay, we think we need a Kemuel, how do we get ready? What do we need to be? Where do we need to be in order to approach this with you?
Wow. Perfect. That's a perfect question. This is going to sound so unorthodox, but I guess what is it about me at this point? The first thing I tell people is I don't want you to need me.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people are like, what? Like, that's what you lead with? Absolutely. I don't want you to need me. What does that mean? Hey, I need you to be able to do the things that you can control.
Yeah.
A lot of people become codependent instead of interdependent, which I believe is the strongest form of living and existing and really growing. So for me, I always tell people, what are the systems and processes that you have in place before I get there? Yes, I can build out systems for you, but I can't. Usually building it out of nowhere means that, one, it's too early in your process. I'm just keeping it real. It's too early in your process to bring me on board. You're going to spend more money on the front end of me having to build out those processes for you before you even get a return. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not here to waste your time. I'm not here to waste my time, honestly. So I don't want people who need me. I want people who want better systems and processes and have some semblance of sequence. You'll hear me say that a lot because that's a very important word to me. So order and everything is in order relatively, right? Tweak this, tweak that. I can give you a overview of what that's supposed to look like, and then we can connect dots. We can erase a little bit if we need to and draw something different over here. But if you don't know who you are, what you're doing, or why you do it, it's probably too early in your process.
Right.
2, understanding that, hey, I want to scale, and scaling doesn't have to look like a gazillion dollars, but it does need to look like I can identify where I'm at and I can see where I want to be. A lot of times for me, my job is simply shaping people's perceptions, shaping their mindset. And go through just like the brand design of Fly Young Intellectual. That's what we're about. Really, it's about mindset personification, mindset personified. And for me, I see branding as that. I see branding as the personification of your business. So how do we bring that to life? And I can't bring something to, respectfully, I do a lot of good work. I'm not Jesus Christ. I'm not God. I cannot breathe into dirt and become a living thing, right? So it has to be something that is alive, and alive can mean a different set of things, but you have to have a direction. You have to have an idea, a strong sense of self as a brand. If you have a strong sense of self, now you can bring in a professional, whether it's a Kemuel or anybody else, who can now take what it is that you are, who it is that you are and why it is that you do what you do, and now be able to sequence it in a way that gets you sustainable growth. And then now you can really identify what your return on investment is going to be, because now I have a good starting point that's not going to spin too many wheels on the front end and just make a mess. So that's like the concise way to look at it.
Yeah, no, that's really incredible. To consider, some businesses are have been in existence for a little bit, but they still might have this thought that branding is just the logo or it's just the colors.
Right.
And we're obviously way past that point when we're considering
way past, yeah. At the core level, at like the bare minimum, yeah.
Right. Way past that point.
Yeah.
What are some of the outcomes that people can expect when they're seeking the type of brand strategist that is you that is looking at strategic partnerships?
No, great question. It's about yield. It's about yield. It's about results, and it's about yield. And the only way to really get, the value that you want to get out of it is about putting those, once again, those systems and processes that dictate and define. It's funny. I always have like a word of the week, and coincidentally, the word of the week this week is definitive, which then translates to defining. Your job, and my job, I should say, is to help you define your brand. Defining means, one, I look at vertical pillars as categories. How can we define you so that you stay, whatever the top of the category looks like? Top doesn't have to be number one. There's only, a few number one slots across the world. But within that top percentile of whatever it is that your brand offers, your job is to be able to stay within that if you're going to have the best yield. Yeah. And with that being said, a lot of the times people, when they immaturely, going back to your last question, when they immaturely come to me, I ask very like simple questions. I don't even get into like the strategy part and all that hoopla. I ask very simple questions. Like a simple question would be like, how much have you made? That's like a very simple question. You'd be surprised how many people don't know how much they've made. I would have to be like, hey, let me get back to you on that. Wow, that's okay, no problem. Maybe that was one thing. How do you see yourself with your brand growing? And what does the next step of growth look like for you? What is that metric? What is that measuring stick that you can? A lot of people don't even look at the next. Now, I'll be devil's advocate. I get it. Like, in a world where I can pick up my phone, make a website, I can wholesale some things and print something and sell it. I get it. Hey, man, it looks like money right now. And hey, for some people, it might be more so about the money right now. My clients, they're thinking, it's a lot more about sustainable growth. It's a lot more about the next. It's a lot more about hitting certain metrics to be able to stay on top of category. And for us, our job is to make sure that we build strategies in place that continue to have, the return on investment that shows these performance-based things that are built from an authentic place, and be able to tell a story that ties it in there. Yeah. We tie that story. Once we get those, that who, what, and why out the way, and once you recognize that you do have some, a defined aspect to your company, now we can tell the story. And usually that story comes from, as I said, an authentic place, who the owner is and what their intent was for the company, what it is that they put into that. And now we find ways to tell that story. And, we have obviously, the different platforms now where we can tell that story, and they can operate from a place of once it's visual brand storytelling, whether it's being able to take, your metrics and match them up against your competitors. Because that's the thing. A lot of people are afraid to look at their competitors. Yeah. Look at your competitor, not to compete. Right. Competitive benchmarking is a thing where, hey, if I'm a athleisure shoe dealer, I'm going to look at Nike. That's just who the big boy is. Now, I know I'm not a Nike right now, and I know that the percentage of a chance of being a Nike is a little slimmer. However, if I look at what they're doing and I look at what I'm doing, and if there are some things that I can compare and contrast, why not do that? That's like a mirror, and that's like something that I can look at right there and be able to look at how they did certain things, what makes them successful, maybe what's making them maybe less successful this year than maybe the past 10 years. And now that's like really where we come into play, because those are the type of things that we do. We're going to tell you like, hey man, these are the other people in your category.
Right.
You should look at these people and tell you, and look at what they're doing well, what they're not doing well, what you measure up to, what you might not measure up to. And then now we can build strategy that gets you through. And I think that's really like what you're going to get when you work with FYI Management Group.
Oh, you're speaking my language. I'm hearing strategic planning. I'm hearing SWOT and competitor analysis. I'm hearing, I'm hearing all of the things, positioning strategy. I'm hearing all of this. And again, the message that we share on the podcast in general is for those, I'm not going to say small, because some of these agencies that are listening in and working with us have been in existence for, 10, 20 years. But like you said, now it's time to move up a level. Let's get to that next level. And what does that next level look like? But as you were explaining this, I'm thinking about those brands that, they don't understand how culture, their organizational culture plays a part in this, and then how this scaling may shift their culture. So what are some of the cultural things, how internally, what does it look like for brands to go from we're here, we might be ready, we think we're ready, and then we're going to scale? What are some cultural shifts that might happen?
No, that's a great question. Culture is everything, but culture only reflects who you are. You're not going to, it's rare. I'm not gonna say you're not, I don't believe in like absolute. So it's rare that you're gonna find a company that boasts inclusivity and diversity and these things, but respectfully, they're only white when you see them, right? I mean,
right.
That doesn't seem to really add up. Culture is based on the absolute mission and the values that you have set up. And if you're not truly tracking, you can actually get off track for a plethora of reasons, because you're not leading with maybe the values that you started with. Now, the good thing is nobody is perfect. With that being said, there are and there will be pivotal times where you should pivot and tweak things of your values and your mission to be able to affect your culture. However, the culture is only going to be as good as the value. The culture is also only going to be as good as the top. Because everything trickles down. It's not going to go, respectfully from the floor up. Is going to go from the top down. And a lot of, what I realized, a lot of CEOs and leaders, they are, in this day and age, they're not as tangible. The company itself exists. They show up every now and then. Obviously, you have HR and these type of systemic things that you put in, systematic things that you put in to be able to, obviously, you're a CEO. You don't have time to essentially keep your hands on the temperature and the heartbeat of your company. However, I do believe in this day and age, it's more important to be tangible. It's more important to be transparent. That's really where the culture comes from. The best companies that I've worked with thus far have a culture of transparency.
Right.
They own when they mess up. They celebrate everyone when they do well.
Yeah.
And there's a line that keeps them grounded enough to be able to build. Once again, nobody's perfect. So how do you rebound? How do you reassess? How do you regather and reclaim, when you mess up?
Yeah.
it's more than just a PR stunt, like,
Right.
yeah, you can jump out there and make a statement. But if people are realizing that your culture is contrary to your PR, then you're still losing, on that brand perception side of things.
Right.
So for me, culture is built on transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Culture is built on paying attention to the way the world is going. You would have to be, really far up your butt, have your head really up your ass to really think like, hey, I'm the end all be all, and that's all that there is to culture. Like, really, you really have to really build it from the ground up. And I think I'm really realizing now that in this day and age, the transparent and the tangible, they are thriving.
Yeah.
And the leaders who are willing to put themselves in a place of servitude, that culture of being able to serve is one of the cultures that will continue to stand the test of time, because you are leading from a place of, hey, I'm not asking you to do anything more than I'm willing to do. And I'm realizing that culture and that type of leadership style is really what's driving successful businesses today.
Oh, that is so good. And you've just, again, when you speak, I see the storyline, right? And I see the culture, transparency, good leadership. Now we want to tell that story to then find a good partner.
Right. That's right. That's
And
right.
you said earlier, it's like, dating a person. And if they're not understanding what I'm saying, they gotta understand not only what you're saying, but who you are, how you are, and why you are. And so now, you're forming this marriage, so to speak, of two brands. But if there's a leader who's like, all right, I'm here, I want to do this, what should they be looking for in their partner, their potential partner?
Wow, it's a great question. Again, yeah, it goes back to alignment. If you are trying to align with others, look at your communication style. Are they similar in that nature? Are they willing to listen? Are they hearing you? Are they processing who it is that you are, or is it just a money play? Really, truly, there are those that are just simply trying to make a transactional instead of relational type of commitment, and then identifying, like, if it's about going to become the best partner on the journey, we have to be able to see what down the road looks like for both parties or the multiple parties. Because at the end of the day, it's not going to be a train ride forever. It's not going to be in perpetuity. It's not going to be. So identifying what does the end look like, that's super important. And then once you can identify what the end of the relationship would look like, what that metric is, what's that dollar amount, what's that, hey, we might put an option to renew, but it might not be necessary. And that's the type of things that I let clients understand. Like, we don't have to keep going, even if it does work. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, now your brand might become indelibly tied to this brand.
Right.
Now you don't have your own identity. Now, when you're standing by yourself, it seems like, oh, you don't feel as strong. You don't feel as attractive because your partner isn't with you.
Yeah.
So that comes, once again, you have to be strong and really identify who are you as a brand, and what makes that so important. Now, once you partner up with that other partner, identify how far down the road we're going. Where are we going to turn off and be like, hey, man, it was a good ride. I appreciate you. Thank you for doing this. Identifying the good, identifying maybe the bad. Everything's not going to be perfect.
Right.
And then, yes, leave the door open to be able to do more business, but also be honest and say, I think, obviously from a legal standpoint, but we've gotten far enough, and make sure that you're okay with being able to sever things, and go back in your own directions, and just understand that, hey, certain people need to be attached for a certain amount of time, but you don't want to lose your identity in who they are. And that's where the codependency and people becoming crutches in partnership, instead of becoming like, a collaborator. There's a difference between being a collaborator and being a crutch. And,
Right.
at the bare minimum of who we are, if we were to go back to elementary school, your teacher used to be like, hey, group project. Who do you want?
Right.
You're either going to go with like your best friend, or you're going to try to get to the smartest person in the class because they always do good. You're trying to attach yourself to someone strong that you want to work with. Two, they will hold up their end of the bargain. And that, I don't think it's any different. I think you should look at it just as simply as that translates. Identify the room. Look at, this might be my best friend. This might be an attractive business proposition. This might be a great partner from afar, but they might not hold up their end of the bargain. They might expect you to do most of the work because you're smaller or you're bringing this, to the table. So really identifying the strengths in and communicating at a high level is really integral to making sure that you're going down the same path, on the same road, with the same visions and morals and mission at the forefront, and then everything else will kind of follow along.
Man, Kemuel, I feel like we're sitting in a masterclass right now because you are dropping again, speaking my language. And I know that this is information that so many brands, so many business owners, so many CEOs have in mind. There's this question, right? Like, who do we partner with? Who could we have as a sponsor? People aren't thinking about, partnerships and just like the collaborative partnerships that you mentioned, but also sponsorships,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
And thinking about these things and what does it mean and how long does it last? And setting up those terms and parameters and those types of relationships. But I know that you have other platforms that you share information on, and I'm subscribing today. But I tuned in a little bit for Fly Young Intellectuals podcast. So tell us about your platform and how people can continue to hear you and learn more about what you do and how you do it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, man, and much respect to you on your platform as well. Thank you for the kind words.
Of course.
Yeah, Fly Young Intellectual was built, if you don't mind me giving you a little backstory.
Yeah,
Fly Young
please.
Intellectual was built, it was honestly built for me. And when I say that, before I even started a podcast or whatnot, I had this name for years. And then I remember I had it in my notes and I lost that phone and notes went bad, disappeared. And I couldn't remember what the name was. But I remember that acronym was FYI. And that's really, from my background, my dad was really gung-ho on giving information and studying and being able to be this wealth of knowledge. When we were kids, he used to always say, hey, put down that Mickey Mouse book. And Mickey Mouse book just stood for anything that was on our reading level. That was the Mickey Mouse book. Stop reading anything that's on your reading level. Go pick up that Blue Britannica. You know what I'm saying? And read something today. And when I get back from work, I wanted you to be able to give me that back, and tell me what you learned today. With that being said, as I started, going through my own things, there were, even in school, I was always told or my parents were always told, hey, Kemuel is great student, he does his work, all of that, but he talks so much. And it was this negative stigma that teachers and educators put on me my whole career. Not that I'm fighting, not that I'm, robbing, but I just talk too much. And FYI was a way for me to be able to reclaim that in a way, and repurpose that negative stigma and be able to use my voice for good. And which I don't think I was using it for bad, but hey, you're talking too much in the class while the teacher is talking, then time and place for everything. But yeah, just hearing that over and over in my mind, it really just played, that negative thing. So for me, FYI, once I started it, on the podcast, it was really about informing, inspiring, and interacting with my community. And, we find ways to take people's stories, that are pushing themselves and pushing their mindsets to the next level and pushing themselves to their careers and really like taking their self-care seriously and their mental health seriously and find a way to like really tie that up into a neat package. And that's how FYI Intellectual Podcast was born. And I'm very proud of it. We've been acknowledged, in some cool, publications and things of that nature. But it's not about that for me. As I said, it's honestly at the core of it a storytelling platform where we're able to tell other people's stories at a high level, and we're able to help shape people's mindsets on it. Recently we had Dr. Rob Kelly on, and he's this neurologist and this guy who helps people overcome addiction, but from the mindset and wellness standpoint and overall. And at that point, I had really felt in my spirit like, wow. First of all, he found me online. His booking agent found us, so that was beautiful.
Yeah.
And he's a white London guy from the UK, and we had so much in common. Even his upbringing, he started as a bass player, and like we connected there, and so beautiful to be able to have him on the platform and really realize that it was a full circle moment and essentially kind of quote unquote the height of what I felt like it has been so far, because I was able to bring someone who doesn't come from my culture, doesn't come from my background, but is doing work with people on developing their mindsets, and also has like that exuberance and that like will to like inform and really like inspire people. He didn't ask me for anything. I was like, hey man, what do you need? He's like, man, I just want to take another platform and just inform people. And I was like, wow, that's what life is for me. The beautiful thing about life is when we're able to attain knowledge and give it back. And my heart is really in education at the core of me, and being able to like inspire people, because as Kobe Bryant said, that's like our greatest thing that we can do for anyone, is to inspire them to be more, to be better, to be greater. So as long as I live, and I will continue to build platforms, whether it's FY or anything else. I want to make sure that I'm giving back the information. I don't want to be that gatekeeper. I want to quote unquote gatekeep is being able to position myself at top of category wherever I am, so that I can open the gate and let as many people that deserve it come through. And that's where I'm at. And that's what Flying Intellectual is about. That's what the podcast is about. And we're going to continue building those stories and exposing people to that, so that they can continuously have things that live on, and they can listen and indulge and embrace and know that there's more out there, and you're better and you can be better. And don't worry about the imposter. It will be there. I think I'm surprised that some of the highest achieving people that I've met in this life have imposter syndrome to some extent. So it's about, it's about owning that. It's about being able to really just look yourself in the mirror and identify that I do belong, that I am worthy of what it is that I have done and what I have accomplished so far. And, God doesn't make mistakes. He didn't mistakenly give you this journey. Everything is perfectly crafted. And that's just how I operate.
Oh, such a powerful message. Your brand, right? All that you are, just displayed here today in this conversation. I don't know what your brand pillars are, but I receive the intellectual, I receive the giving, the community, authenticity, and the integrity. And I'm when we started the conversation, I was chuckling because we talked about being beach prejudice, which is new to my vocabulary. But I can't help but lean into the fact that islanders, we're different people. We are different people, and we bring such, I'm going to say, you bring such color to this space and to other people. And I just want to say thank you for sharing the knowledge and for having the heart to do it. And again, for being with us today. But if you would like to leave our audience with one thing today, what would that be?
Oh man. I think it was what I said earlier. Flow like water, but the best water is structured. don't be afraid to live life in a way where you can feel, you can absorb, and you can channel, and you can really take advantage of what life has to offer without sectioning off yourself. Be as pliable and be as extremely willing to learn as you can be, and then structure it. Find ways to make sure that you are being in a system and setting up systems for yourself that you can be able to maximize that. And it's not just, wasted energy. You can really repurpose it, and you can send it back out, and you can channel that at a high level. Flow like water, but the best water is structured.
Incredible. Everyone, Kemuel C, Browne, and Kemuel, how can we find you online?
You can find me on, Instagram at FlyYoungIntellectual. You can find us, our website is www.flyyoungintellect.us, or .us as we like to say. You can follow me on Facebook, Kemuel C. Browne. And yeah, let's connect, man. I'm open. I'm an open book. I'm not like one of these like fake online personalities that's like too big to talk. I love to talk. I love to interact. I love to be able to like shape narratives and continue to like just get to know people at a high level. That's part of my process. And I learn the most from being able to converse with people of all creeds, all colors. And yeah, let's do it. Let's talk. And thank you, Felicia. Thank you so much for the platform that you yourself have. Thank you for, inspiring people to speak up and inspiring people to want to own who it is that they are and what makes them unique. And I look forward to the continued growth and success of your brand.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Changemaker, real quick before you go, if today's episode helped you in some way, the best way to thank me is to head over to Apple Podcasts, subscribe to the channel, and leave a review. I'd also love to connect with you over on social. You can find me at Friends Call Me Fee. Until next time, keep changing the game.